welcome to this week's episode of the Performance Cafe. I hope that you're having a spectacular week, and I look forward to our chat today. Because I had a really interesting thing happen to me a couple of weeks ago. Actually, it's a couple of months ago now, but it's sort of stuck with me. Let me first tell you about a more recent incident. I was speaking to a very good friend of mine about the fact that there's still a gender pay gap. And he went, please don't tell me in this day and age, women are still being paid less than men. And it was so interesting because it didn't come from a fact that this person doesn't care. It comes more from the perspective of they don't discriminate, and therefore they can't understand that other people actually still do. And I just sort of thought, well, that's so funny. Here's someone that is in a leadership position in business. I get why they're not seeing it, but I suppose until it happens to you, maybe it's not quite such, a relevant thing. It doesn't hit you close to home. By the way, this is someone who has their own business and therefore does pay women equal to men. But what happened a couple of months ago is I have a talk that I'm busy creating, Heartbeats Over Spreadsheets, and it's about productive kindness and how we make the world a bit kinder in the business place. And one of the things that I was talking about is about how poorly managers can manage people, how much damage they can do, and someone said to me, are we still talking about this? It cannot be that bad. And then I got to thinking about it. And I think the gap that's happening is that when we say that people are being treated poorly, people think, they sort of shackled to desks. They sort of go decades and centuries back and expect that. But I think it's become a lot more subtle. So, for example, one of my big examples about how this happens is when I meet a business person who says to me, I treat my people well. We follow all the labor laws. Now, in South Africa, that is saying something because our labor laws are incredibly strict. But even then, following a law does not create a connection with a human. So yes, even if you pay people the appropriate salary, even if they've got enough leave, even if you're following, every rule in the Basic Conditions of Employment Act in South Africa, you still need to connect with that person. You still need to actually have some form of a relationship. Because if you didn't need that person, you could have put a robot there. Then you didn't have to build a relationship. But if you need a person, it also means you need someone with whom you can communicate vision and values. And the only way you can do that is like being in the room. So my second example is a direct lead on from that. And that is that you should not have an open door policy. You heard me right? I didn't say you must have one. I said you mustn't have one. Because I find that often managers will say, I have an open door policy. People can come in at any time. But what they do is they relay this as a general guideline. I'm thinking of Pirates of the Caribbean, where they were talking about the Pirates Code. And when it didn't suit them, they went, it's more of a guideline. You don't have to stick to it. And the reason for not having an open door policy is that if you leave the door open, you expect people to come to you if there's an issue. If you don't have an open door policy, but an open person policy, then you are open to going to your team and saying, let's quickly have a 15-minute coffee break. I just want to hear how you're doing. I want to hear what's going on in your life. I want to hear if there's something around the project that we can help you with. So what happens is, it's like when someone dies and people go to the mourning family and go, tell us if you need anything. They are so overwhelmed. They are so, at that point in time, they can't think of anything. They need everything. But at that point in time, their focus is on the mourning, not how to take care of themselves. So it's better to say to them, can I bring you food? Take the kids to school. Can I? Right? And so this is the kind of discussion that I think if we quit the open door policy and we have an open people policy, then you open to go to people. Doesn't mean they can't come to you. But because of the power differential in business, you're going to find that until you start reaching out to people, they're not going to come to you very easily. It's quite interesting. As you guys know, I'm a channel partner at Inspired Leadership, and one of my clients the other day, one of the participants in our leadership development course, went and reached out to her team. And she said to me, it was awful. They didn't say anything. And I said to her, remember, it's the first time you're doing it. They're not sure what to expect from this. You're going entirely against the culture of what was dictated before you took on this managerial role. And so you need to go out, reach out. And then once you've reached out enough, then they will make use of an open door policy. But that never means that you need to stop doing the reaching out as their manager. And also remember, if you reach out the first time and it doesn't work, if it's going against the culture, if it's never been done before, which I hope is exactly the case, then just give people a bit of breathing room, keep going back, keep it light until they decide how they're going to deal with this and how they're going to make use of it. Sorry. So here's a contentious one. And I know everyone's going to hate me for it, and I know it's really counter to a lot of what's happening in the world right now, but be transparent about pay. So when it comes to salaries, we've always been told you have to sign here that you're never going to disclose your salary. Why not? Why can I not disclose my salary? Plus, by the way, how often do you think people actually listen to that? They don't go and publish it on YouTube or on social media, but people talk. And the problem that we have with the lack of transparency in pay scales is that when it comes to that person, if they don't know how they are faring in relation to people around them, they don't know if they need to grow and if there's a problem. So what happens is one day they find out they're being paid too little, and then they blow up. And whether there's been a performance issue or disciplinary issues or whatever, all of a sudden that doesn't matter. Because what happens is, as the manager and as the business, you get to look like you're evil and scheming and plotting. But if people understand what people in the same range get paid and where they are and where they stand, then they know that because there's transparency, you can't hide anything from them. And then it allows you to shift the focus from this is what you're being paid because this is what you're delivering and this is the standard at which you're delivering it. And we would like you to up that standard just a little bit. While on the topic of pay, my next pet peeve, sorry, almost choked. My next pet peeve, of course, is when we ask for salary slips when we are hiring individuals. You see, you are hiring that individual in your company. Now you go and ask them for a salary slip that someone else who you do not know paid them, or you're looking at the salary that someone else paid them, where you don't know the company, you don't know the manager, you don't know the work they were doing, you don't know how they were doing, because even if you phone for a testimonial, one never knows exactly the quality of what's going to come out there. Maybe they say this person's really bad because they want them back, right? If they don't get the job, maybe they'll come back to us. Don't ask for a salary slip. You have a job. You know what you were prepared to pay for the job. And therefore, you go in and offer that person a salary that would make sense to you. Because you see, the other thing that's happening, and this is actually where the thought came from initially, is because if we take a look again at the biases on how people get paid, we often speak about gender, but let's not leave out people who are slightly older or trying out something new. Because that individual was paid a certain amount at a previous company, you do not want to inherit the bias of that company into yours. If you're prepared to take that risk, then I need to introduce you to a couple of brand managers and reputation managers. I have them for you. The other thing that is such a pet peeve for me, and this is, I think, the biggest slap in the face, and please understand that these things I think people do, and we don't realize how offensive it is and why people will quit or just not. We often speak of ghosting in recruitment, but that is why people ghost businesses, is because if you can't be independent, if you can't prove to me that you're a good, strong company on your own and make your own decisions, I'm not going to want to work for you. And so the next thing, a major pet peeve of mine, when someone resigns, do not offer them more money. Can I please repeat that? Do not make a counter offer to someone who has resigned. The reason for this is, firstly, if they've resigned, they've probably had enough of you. So even if they accept the counter offer, you're probably not getting the best version of them back. Secondly, it's a slap in the face. If an employee has to leave a company every time, or threaten to leave a company just to get a promotion or an increase, then that means that you are promoting a culture of tantrums. If I don't shout, scream, leave, make a big fuss, then I don't get heard. No one's going to want to work for that culture. So you're not doing yourself a favor, and you're not doing that person a favor. What I would like to remind you is what it costs to replace someone who's left, especially if the person was fairly efficient. Every morning before you go into the office, think what it would cost to replace anyone on your team. And then go and have those discussions about how are you, what's going on in your world, where are you at. So instead of trying to buy them back after they've psychologically left, just put in the effort, 15 minutes every day, and you don't even have to speak to everyone every day. You can speak to a couple of people, during the week. So instead of trying to get them back, just stop it from happening. And while you're stopping from happening, speak to the person as a person, not part of a cog in a larger setup. Because what we find is people are very good at asking the skills-based questions. Is there anything you need to learn? Is there any equipment that you need? And those are really useful, right? I'm not dissing them. But also find out, what is that person's hobby? Do they have family members? How's the family doing? How was the recent holiday? When are you taking your next break? Because then you get to know the person and what they value. And if you understand their values, you can align their values to the values of the company. Yet again, making sure that they don't quit and that they actually perform at the office. Another big example, and I mean, I could carry on with this for a while, but another big example is when managers don't make the transition from a co-worker or an employee to a manager. Now, what do I mean by that? Very often, we will sink back into our comfort zones if we are challenged. So what happens is, if I take on a role, any new role, and I'm not comfortable in the role, a knee-jerk reaction would be to find a way to do the old role in, sort of like just to make me feel okay until I've transitioned fully. The problem is, if you don't transition fully, you're not going to be effective as a manager. And the other thing is, while you're not transitioning, you are holding on to something someone else should be doing. And often this takes the form of micromanagement, which is another reason people quiet quit and actually just quit entirely. Because not only are you then micromanaging the person, but you're almost doing their role. And guess what? Actually, your management thinks that you're quiet quitting because you're not stepping into the new role. You're just carrying on doing what you were paid to do previously. And so from that perspective, it really isn't great to be a micromanager, because all that you're doing is you're filling yourself with other people's work and opportunities. And obviously you've been promoted, so you're on the next level already. And so that is all from me for today. Let me see. I don't know if we've got any comments. Oops, let me see. I don't see any comments yet. But last time we were speaking about quiet quitting. And Hendra reached out and asked the question, which I didn't answer then, so I'm answering today. while I wait for any other comments or questions that may come through. He asked a question, but isn't quiet quitting just about preventing burnout? And I think it is. I think that quiet quitting is just a way for us to prevent, sorry guys, quiet quitting is just a way that we prevent being exploited. And I think often, as I said in the beginning, exploited feels like, oh, I get beaten with whips at work. Actually, no, it could be any of the things that I just mentioned, because even that is either demeaning or degrading, or it is just negative, and it doesn't allow an employee to show up at their best. But I think that there is something to be said for this concept of linking quiet quitting to I've just forgotten the word. The thing I just said. Can you believe it? I just forgot a word. That is so weird. Anyway, the word I just said? That word. I think the reason for that is because a lot of people have burnout. Thank you, there's my word. A lot of people have burnout because they gave too much to start off with. Employers were too demanding, were asking too much, were pushing too hard. And therefore, when that happened, people sort of achieved, kept on going until they fell over, because then the employer never stopped asking too much. So I do see where that connection comes from. It's just exploitation of a different type. But as I said last time as well, the problem with quiet quitting is also, what do we choose for our jobs? So there is a line to be drawn about how much do we regulate and where do we regulate. Right. I'm not seeing any further questions. I'm first going to go and be embarrassed in another corner for forgetting the word burnout. Really, old age. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode of Performance Cafe. I certainly have. And I think we're reaching for a new topic next week. So let me know if there's anything that you would like to hear about. Otherwise, I will just see you next week at the Performance Cafe.